I'm David Wilcock, and this is Wisdom Teachings. Is it possible that DNA, viruses, and even entire bacteria could be formed inside hermetically sealed cells without any of the normal processes that we associate in biology? Could this be done strictly energetically, the formation of this type of bacteria in a cell? Have two different scientists at least already discovered this? And could it be used in a negative way? Are there already technologies in place trying to beam illness into us? And if this is true, are there countermeasures that we can learn today in this episode to stop that from happening? What are the greater implications of this science of wave genetics on our own health, wellness, and ultimate evolutionary progress? These are some of the questions we're going to answer in this week's episode. I'm very happy to be bringing you these episodes because the work that we're doing is bringing together scientists who have not had a voice, who need to be heard, whose work is credible, and it's the synergy of their discoveries that ultimately pave the way to an entirely new view of science. And that view of science was illustrated by Dr. Oleksiy Dmitriev as what he called wave genetics. He goes way farther than other discoveries that we've been talking about in terms of actually modeling the weird stuff that we were talking about. So remember, we had in the last episode Dr. Vadim Tsaidovich, and Tsaidovich's discovery was to take plasma conditions like we see in outer space, introduce dust particles in them, and he found out that double helix type patterns occurred. And these patterns were attracted to each other, they would replicate inside each other, which suggests reproduction, and they would even evolve. So again, this suggests that the basic principles of how life is formed in the universe can occur in the simple medium of space by simply creating a computer simulation of what space is like and putting some dust in there. You get things that look like the beginnings of DNA. Then we also looked at Dr. Sergei Lykin, and Lykin's amazing discovery was to color code different types of DNA, put them together in this water medium with nothing else, and over vast distances in this kind of spherical ball, what they would do is congregate together. And this image shows the color-coded DNA coming together in various patterns, defying all the laws of science and physics as we now understand them. Lykin thought that this was electrical charge of some kind, but that doesn't really provide an adequate explanation. I was suggesting to you that there's some principle of sympathetic resonance, the idea of one tuning fork and another tuning fork, and if one is resonating, the other will start ringing the same way. But fundamentally, what we're dealing with in both of these discoveries, Tsaidovich and Lykin, is the idea that life is an intrinsic pattern in the background of the universe, and they understood that enough to make that conjecture. But then we have to go beyond that, and we have to see how this actually works and create DNA from non-living material. So this is a review, but it's a very important one. The Nobel Prize-winning biologist Dr. Luc Montagnier, who won the Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus, so he definitely knows what he's doing. He was the first person to have spotted it. And what he was able to do was to create DNA in a non-living material, in this case water, simply by vibration. So that takes it, again, beyond the level that we had it before. Now, he has actually had to work with the Chinese government because the Western scientific institutions are so inimical to this type of science that they don't even want to look at it. This was presented to the United Nations, as we said, and they're calling it DNA teleportation. And there's been a great deal of scorn, a great deal of skepticism. They just can't accept that this is what's really going on because it changes the nature of water on a very fundamental level. Water is no longer just hydrogen and oxygen bound together. Water is no longer a non-living material that just kind of jump-starts life once life is already present. Life can arise from water itself. And remember, water is one of the basic states of matter. We have liquid, solid, and gas. But then there's that fourth state of plasma. So in the fourth state of plasma, we're already seeing a basic simulation creating DNA-like structures. And they say, well, this could be a precursor to life that's already there. Well, Montagnier found the same thing in water. He's actually creating DNA structures in water. And this is so amazing. All he had to do, again, was have 2 test tubes. As you can see in this diagram, the one on the left inside that orange can has DNA in it in small amounts. If there's too much, it doesn't work. The tube on the right is just plain water. You wrap a coil around it, give it the Schumann resonance, the basic heartbeat electromagnetically of the Earth, 7 hertz. It's actually about 7.8. And then you let it sit there for 18 hours, and sure enough, you get DNA structures in the water. Because this has been subject to so much scientific scorn, I want to bring your attention to an extremely important quote that supports the validity of Montagnier's research. Because, honestly, one of the things that's really bothersome to me is that when people say things like, well, David Wilcock made this up, David Wilcock has no evidence. This is not something that I made up. These are Nobel Prize-winning scientists, and they're coming together and they're bucking the trend where our belief systems will not allow us to see the truth for what it is. So Montagnier got a very valuable professional endorsement from the UC Berkeley scientist Jeffrey A. Reimer. And he is a theoretical chemist, and here he is with the requisite chalkboard with all kinds of scary equations on it, and he's got that beautiful blue shirt. He looks a lot like my father, actually, with the beard and the white hair. Here's a picture of him when he's younger, and take a look at all of his credentials. CBE Chair of the Ward and Catherine Schillinger Distinguished Professorship in Chemical Engineering. His focuses are on material chemistry, applied spectroscopy, alternative energy, and nuclear spintronics. Most people probably wouldn't even know what that is, but the point is, this guy is a tenured professor at Berkeley. He's got incredible credentials, and he supports Montagnier's work. This quote does appear in this article that we saw from New Scientist, where the scientists are having scorn over the claims of teleported DNA, but Reimer does not. Take a look at what Reimer says here. If these results that Montagnier discovered are correct, these would be the most significant experiments performed in the past 90 years. Well, that encompasses a lot of stuff. 90 years at the time that he wrote this, which was about 10 years ago, or not quite 10 years ago, but basically, we're looking at since the 1920s. So that encompasses the theory of relativity. That encompasses so many scientific breakthroughs. The fact that all this technology that we've discovered, the computer chip, fiber optics, laser beams, all of these amazing things, space travel. He's saying that this is the most significant discovery in the past 90 years. So think about how much has happened in 90 years. And then he says, this demands a re-evaluation of the whole conceptual framework of modern chemistry. Now, this is one of the top hotshot chemists in the world from Berkeley. And he's saying, if this is true, everything we think we know about chemistry has to be changed. So please don't come out, and I know it's not you, you're way too cool watching this show to be the ones doing this, but people coming out and saying that I made this up or that these people are not credible, you actually have these skeptics who in many cases do not have any advanced degree, and they speak with braggadocio and overconfidence, and they say, this has been disproven. Oh, well, you know, yeah, he won a Nobel Prize, but, come on, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Dude, this is the evidence. It's there. You have the extraordinary evidence. And you got one of the best chemists in the world saying that this is very likely true, the most significant discovery in 90 years, and chemistry has to be rewritten. The only way you can rewrite chemistry to allow this to happen is to have energy involved with matter in a way that we don't understand, because energy is involved in this. 2 test tubes, hermetically sealed. Take a look at the diagram again. They are not contacting each other. They are capped off. There is some energy released by the electromagnetic coil that's causing water to have an alchemical transmutation. Notice Reimer's not going to say the word alchemy. But water is just hydrogen and oxygen, and somehow it's retooling into DNA. And we already saw the dust in these plasmas forming helical structures. We already saw lichen, where you have DNA that is similar types attracting to itself over vast distances. But now it's a step further, because DNA shouldn't be arising out of water. And yet it does. So there's more to this than I've ever shared with you before. And this comes to us beginning with one of the key quotes from Montagnier that I haven't done on this show yet. Montagnier, in looking back on this research finding that he made, said, "It could be that the propagation of life is able to make use of the quantum nature of reality to project itself in subtle ways, as has been hinted at in previous experiments. Life is able to use the quantum nature of reality itself to project." So what does that say? That says quantum physics is alive, quantum physics makes life, the universe is alive, because quantum physics should be consistent throughout the universe. As far as we see into the deepest recesses of space, light behaves like light, magnetism behaves like magnetism, the quantum laws are the same. It's not like there's a sudden quantum change if you go far enough out to the reaches of the end of the universe. So quantum physics is supposed to be a fixed set of principles. And now what he's saying is that life is written into quantum physics. It's there at the intrinsic level. And that's very, very astonishing. Let's read more of his quote. "Alternatively, it could be that life itself is a complex projection of these quantum phenomena and utterly depends on them in ways not yet understood because they are incredibly hard to detect." So life is actually projected out of quantum phenomena. And again, you want to talk to the guy and say, well, look at this data from Wilcock, look at this data from Mark White, look at how the geometry of the tetrahedron has your 4 amino acids, the 4 nucleotides, the A, C, T, and G. And again, if you haven't watched previous episodes, you might be lost right now, so please do so. And then we saw the dodecahedron with its 20 points is the 20 amino acids. So this simple relationship between geometry, which all is vibration, is the underlying key to this quantum projection of life. It's all vibrational. We have the science there. All the pieces can be put together in a beautiful new way. And so Montagnier, you are correct. Life is projecting from a quantum phenomena. It's fundamentally vibrational in nature, and it involves geometry. Let's read the last part of his quote now. "Water might be a good medium in which DNA can copy itself using processes that hint at quantum entanglement and teleportation, which is our term." So there it is. You have a Nobel Prize winning scientist saying life is a complex projection of quantum phenomena. We're seeing how this works with the laws of geometry and vibration. And you have Reimer, one of the top chemists in the world, saying this is the most significant discovery in the last 90 years. Everything we know about chemistry, everything we know about molecules and atoms and matter and energy and consciousness and life, it all has to be rewritten. But what if Montagnier wasn't the first? As it turns out, there's a deeper level to his research that we can dive into that's in that same paper. So check this out. This is something else I haven't shown you yet. In a paper last year, Interdisciplinary Sciences, Computational Life Sciences, Montagnier described how he discovered the apparent ability of DNA fragments and entire bacteria both to produce weak electromagnetic fields and, this is the key, to regenerate themselves in previously uninfected cells. DNA fragments and entire bacteria appearing spontaneously in cells that are uninfected. Now, wait a minute. Okay, wait, hold on. We're supposed to know what infections are. We're supposed to know how they work. Infections are supposed to involve the contact of the infected toxic material with the cell. This idea of an energetic infection, this idea that an infected pathogenic bacteria can appear inside a cell with no contact, with no actual bacteria? Whoa! And what if this is already well known? What if it's already being used? Now this gets into the kind of fear porn territory, but I'm not going to tell you something like this unless there's a way around it. And it does appear, based on some other research that we can look at, that this is already in use. And I first found out about this from the work of Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden, who calls this phenomena scalar waves. Now I usually use the term source field, but the Russians often called it torsion fields. Bearden tends to call them scalar waves. It's the same basic idea. The scalar wave is this wave where it moves forward and backwards along the same line. So it's doing this kind of thing. And that's a scalar wave. Basically, it moves forward and backward in one vector, okay? Now, that's a different type of energy than what our scientists normally acknowledge. The Russians call it torsion fields. It has a spinning quality. It's actually hidden in gravity. And gravity, again, as I've said so many times, has a lot more magic in it than we think. It doesn't just push us down. Gravity is the energy of consciousness with the spin fields. Gravity is the energy of life. Those spin fields actually feed and support life. And if you have the right combination of these pure spin frequencies of gravity, you can assemble life out of something that was not alive. Because remember, those geometries I'm telling you about, the tetrahedron spinning inside the dodecahedron, those are ultimately gravitational. They're created by gravity. They're frequencies that arise in gravity. Gravity is the underlying pattern that makes this happen, and gravity is what pulls that dust together in Seidovich's study where he simulated the plasma in space and then saw double helixes in the dust. Now we get to this guy, Dr. Vlail Kazanchiev. I understand it's not the most flattering picture of him. Happens to be the only one that I've ever been able to find. It looks like it was taken from a Russian television show. Kazanchiev did some really, really stunning research that Lieutenant Colonel Tom Bearden was talking about in his books many years ago now. Here's the Kazanchiev study of virus transmission. It's very, very interesting and very disturbing. 2 cell cultures are kept in neighboring sealed petri dishes that are made out of quartz. That's important because if it's glass, it doesn't work, and we'll say why in a minute. One of these cultures is a diseased cell culture, has an infection. The other culture is completely healthy. And what he found was that the disease could be transferred from the tainted culture to the healthy culture just by light, just by